Smile.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know, you got to relax. Just in front of all these cameras here.
Oh yeah, and it's hot. We don't send this anyplace. Maybe to Hollywood, right? That's it.
Absolutely.
But you got a career ahead of you. Heck, the
America's
boilers
funniest
going.
videos.
That's right. Yeah, that's it. Today is June 20th, 2001. My name is Dr. Tom Bennett. I'm from Kane University, and I'm working with Mr. Paul Lobauer of Pro Media, Digital Media Productions of Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Today we're interviewing Mr. Gary S. Pepek aboard the USS Battleship New Jersey, now stationed in Camden, New Jersey. Gary Pepek served aboard the Battleship New Jersey from November 1981 through February 1984. He was originally a boiler operator, and he finally is retiring from the Navy on June 30th, several days from now, as a Master Chief, rank E9. He served also aboard the USS Shenandoah, AD-26, the USS Tripe, FF-1075, then the USS New Jersey, BB-62, SIMA, San Francisco, the USS Pyro, AE-24, the USS Shasta, AE-33, and he also worked at the Service School, Great Lakes, Illinois, served aboard USS Detroit, AOE-4, and served with the Combat Logistics Squadron in Earl, New Jersey. Gary, thank you for talking with us today.
Welcome.
We'll start off the conversation with how did you get to be involved with the Battleship New Jersey?
Well, back in 1981, it was my first enlistment was getting ready to be over with, so I re-enlisted for orders for the Battleship New Jersey. And they put the call out. That just struck me, especially being from the state of New Jersey. So I just had to jump on it.
And currently you live, by the way, in Jackson, New Jersey.
Yes.
Is that where you were born?
No, I'm originally from Newark,
Newark, New Jersey.
Right.
What section of Newark?
the Ironbound section up by Ferry Street.
My father grew up there.
Small world.
So you're from Newark, and by the way, what made you enlist in the Navy, and what age did you enlist in the Navy at?
Actually, at 17. My family moved out of Newark. We moved to the next town over to Belleville. I graduated Belleville High School. At the time, I was working for a guy, Murray Edson, in Metals Industries. As a factory laborer. Didn't seem like a future to go. I didn't want to go to school. Actually, I just wanted to run around, but money didn't permit that. So went down, saw a recruiter, and I came.
What made you choose the Navy?
Actually, originally I was going in the Marines, but the Marine recruiter, he was a little nag. So that's why I went Navy.
You went down the hall and signed in with the Navy.
Yes.
And you were trained at Great Lakes Naval Center?
Yes, I was. Graduated boot camp, and then, sure enough, of all things, I didn't want to go to school. They sent me to A school up there to be a boiler tech. So I sat up there from November of '77, and I left there April of '78. So.
And throughout your naval career, you became an expert in boiler room
Operations and maintenance.
Tell us a little bit about the boiler room school.
The boiler room school back then was a self-paced course where it was an open book. You studied and read, and you had homework assignments, and then you just went and you took a test. Once you completed the test and you satisfactorily completed it, you moved on to the next course, and so on and so on. At the very end of the PACE course section, you had operations. They had plant simulators up there. They had a 600-pound plant and a 1,200-pound plant.
What do you mean by 6 and 1,200 pounds? What does that mean?
These are PSI plants that were actually styled after shipboards. Like the USS Trip was a 1,200 PSI plant, which was the simulator for a frigate.
PSI means?
Pounds per square inch. And the 600-pound plant, I don't know what it was, remember what it was after, but just basic steaming plants that you actually went in, they steamed, they operated, they did everything as a working ship, and it was all in the building.
What type of ship was the USS Trip? You mentioned one of the plants was modeled after that.
Right, the Trip was a fast frigate. It was a destroyer type ship, just outside skirts, protect the battle group. Take the torpedo, as it was called. So.
And the first ship you served aboard was the Shenandoah and then the Trip. What
Right.
was the Shenandoah?
The Shenandoah was a repair ship. I served out of Norfolk, Virginia. Did 2 years on board her. I worked in a boiler repair shop on board her. We fixed heat exchangers, boilers, complete boiler works. We would assist on occasion doing pump maintenance because the ship had its own pump valve shop as well. So we did mostly brickwork and heat exchangers on here. So.
And then you went to the Trip.
Yes.
Tell us about the Trip.
USS Trip was a 1,200-pound plant. It was a like I said, a small boy. Worked you steam the operate in the engineering plant, qualifying up to Burnaman. So it's three watch levels. You got messenger, check level, then Burnaman, and she actually served on board her for about 2 weeks, and then we took her into the yards in Bath, Maine. Sat up there for 8 months, then came out, and then we did the shakedown cruises. You know, a couple Caribbean 3-month cruise here, come back, and go another 2-3 months, come back.
What would happen to a boilerman while the ship is in dry dock? What did you do?
Anytime the ship was in the yards, we pretty much tear down our machinery that wasn't contracted out for contractors or anything. Or we do our own valve maintenance, take the valves completely out of the systems, flange off the systems.
Flange off means what?
To ensure just to block them off, to no foreign matter got in there.
Mm-hmm.
Take the valves out, completely take them apart, clean them up, shine them up, put them back together, repack them, put new gaskets in. Pumps, we did that. We did it with Perry Masters. The boilers itself, you know, any supporting equipment that would keep that engineering plant and the boilers operating. That's what we pretty much took care of.
Once when I've been aboard the Battleship New Jersey, I went down to the boiler room, and an old boilerman was down there, and he said at one point when the ship was a ship like this was being dry docked, you could actually open up the boiler and go inside. The boilerman's job was to scrape the inside or clean it.
Yes, we did that as well.
Talk,
In fact,
talk to me about that a little bit.
well, I did that on board here as well.
You did
So I was
that
on
on the
pre-com,
New Jersey.
yes.
Mhm.
The boilers were opened up. All the internals, scrubbers, baffles, internal feed piping, surface blow piping, all the stuff was removed, taking out.
So you actually go inside the boiler itself, which is about how tall? What's it height and diameter?
Oh, you're talking like 3.5 feet inside. That's all you got to play with. You're in there, you're hunched over, and you're doing the best you can, taking all the stuff out. It's really cramped in there. Taking a boiler completely apart and putting it back together, it usually took us 10 days to 2 weeks to do all that.
And how many boilers would you have aboard, say, a ship like the New Jersey?
New Jersey has 8 boilers.
8 boilers.
Each fire room, we have 4 fire rooms. Each fire room has 2, and each boiler supply a main engine, an engine room. So that's why we have 4 engines. So 2 boilers per engine.
How did you get then to come aboard New Jersey? You volunteered for duty on board it?
I volunteered and re-upped for it. It was a guarantee because timing was right. You know, take another oath, give another 4 years, and I got the opportunity to come on board and serve.
Why? Why did you want to come to the New Jersey?
I guess the mystique about it. I mean, come to a ship that is your namesake of state from where you're from. Come to a ship that you knew had a lot of history behind it. To bring it out of mothballs and to see it get back in operation, it just gets your blood pumping, adrenaline up. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
What was it like coming aboard this ship? Do you recall, coming to serve aboard it originally?
Actually, yeah. I came on board in mid-November of 1981. I was the 10th boiler tech to report on board, the 30th engineer, and like the 112th person to check on board at the time. First 2 weeks, it was kind of like muster with your chief, and we had like free reign. It was like get to know the ship, climb through it, go anywhere, and just make sure you're with 2 people. You got your flashlight and hard hat on, and go have fun.
So 2 weeks, you just walked around the ship?
2 weeks, me and another guy just walked around and toured the ship, found those newspapers from 1969, men's magazines, x-rays up in medical. I mean, a lot of stuff. It was just unbelievable.
Was it in dry dock at this point?
No, it was floating alongside.
In Bremerton, Washington?
No, this was in Long Beach, California.
They had a dry dock in Long Beach at that
Right.
point. So it was just sitting in the water.
Sitting in
and
the water,
ready to
pier
reactivate it again under Ronald Reagan's plan to build a Navy back to a 600 ship Navy, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're walking around the ship for 2 weeks. You found, what was left behind? You said newspapers. What else is there?
Well, when we went up in medical, we found a set of x-rays of a broken foot. Like I said, mostly was newspapers. There was one Playboy. In fact, my buddy kept that. And that was pretty much it. It was just newspapers and magazines from that time frame.
And then once you finish walking around the ship and you actually start getting it ready to go back to sea again, what was your task or duties as a boilerman?
As a boilerman, again, we worked down in the fire room. We tore apart the valves. We overhauled them. We did pump maintenance, same with the pumps, took them apart, put all new internals, assembled them in there, and the boilers, took them down, put them back together. Some of the work that, we had to work well with the contractors because they were contracted, like just to re-brick the boilers, so we didn't actually do that, but they did that. But we got the opportunity to help them and
So
to
inside the
learn.
boilers are brick top to bottom with fire-resistant brick. Is that what it's
There's
like?
fire brick, and then there's insulation, and then you have your casing. Same with the floor, and the front you have your coping. The sides inside the boilers are your generating tubes and your sidewall tubes and rear wall tubes. So when you go in, you're actually pretty much seeing a tube nest on both sides, but the back, it would be a brick wall on these boilers.
When you went down to the boiler room and you started working, updating, repairing, what condition was the boiler room in at that point after it had been sitting unused for a period of time?
Oh, it was a dark dungeon. I mean, barely lights were on. We got to climb around and look at everything. Like I said, for the first 2 weeks. Excuse me. Then after that, we started to have to start tracing systems. Before we started actually doing work, people started checking in. As an engineer, in order to know your plant, your space, you have to check every steam system, every water system, ID the valve. Well, we didn't have the numbers on them, but mark the valve, that there was a valve in a certain location by a certain frame. Name the valve as far as if it was a cutout valve, a guarding valve, drain valve. Just have that all drawn out, so then when we did get everything put back together and started labeling everything and gave it a number, you knew where it was. Because a lot of times, like when you're doing drills and everything, they'll say shut out AS24 or MS19, which are main steam valve or auxiliary steam valves, and you have to go over there, open or close or whatever you needed to do at the time. It's easy to remember the number, and people know exactly where to run to.
Did they have any schematics or books on valves that they gave, valves aboard the ship that they gave you?
Well, the chief engineer had all the books for the valve numberings. I know that over time that numbers have changed when people come with different systems. I know the engine numbers, you would think they would be in relationship to the engineering plant, but the engine numbers are not. They're done by shaft, and they go, I think, from left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that makes up your engines. I think number 3 group had number 2 engine or 4 engine. When you think it should have had number 3, but it was all. So those were different, but there were numbers back then with the books that were able.
From what you could see, when the ship was mothballed several years before, did they prepare the ship for mothballs in the boiler room area? Did they just shut it down, close it?
No, it was dark and dirty. Don't get me wrong, but I mean everything was pretty well preserved. I mean the systems when we started operating everything, there wasn't a whole lot that you really had to clean out. They did the chemical cleaning and everything, but it was really really well kept. I thought, considering it just laying there.
How many years had it been laying unused?
Oh, I know she was decommed, I think the early 70s after NAM, and then brought back out in 81. So we're talking 10 years maybe.
10 years or so, and being largely untouched.
Right.
From what I understand, parts of the ship, the recent pulling of the ship out of Bremerton, Washington to New Jersey, a lot of the ship had been controlled as far as temperature and humidity goes.
Right.
Did they have that control enforced then too, temperature humidity controls aboard the ship? Or no? As far as ventilation systems installed in the ship, where the ship is sealed, they just have in effect its own internal climatic system.
Are you talking about once we're steaming?
When you went ahead and recommissioned the ship again, what did you find? Was it temperature and humidity controlled or no?
Oh, it was in the beginning during the first 2 weeks, and then he started to open everything up and airing it out.
Okay, good.
Because they were removing the sealed hatches and all the equipment.
What was the biggest task that you faced in bringing the ship back online again as a boilerman?
Well, maintenance-wise, I think it wasn't nothing really strenuous. I mean, just natural stuff that every sailor on board has done before. Other than you might have been a new guy just checking out on board. It wasn't nothing out of the ordinary. The hard part was getting trained to steam them. back then we've had people from World War II come back on board and go to different engineering places to train and discuss how these things operated and the cause and effect on when they shot the guns. You know, they said these boilers would pant.
We're what now?
The boilers would pant, and no one knew, you know, so pant, that's lack of oxygen in the boiler, so the casing would get sucked in a little bit.
Pan is P-A-N-N-E?
P-A-N-T, pant.
Pant,
Just
P-A-N-T, like
right.
that they would shake back and forth.
Right.
A little bit. Interesting.
And you know, you said, nah, because, you know, I've been a boiler tech for a while on 2 other ships, and I never seen the boiler pant, but that's usually from lack of oxygen and air going into the case, into the boiler. And sure enough, the first time we went out and did the gun shoots, you know, I was down on watch, and you could see them cases just go.
And that would be caused, I guess, by the concussion effect of
That's
the
a concussion and a fireball that, because the guns forward and after, they surround the stacks, and through the stacks we get our air to feed into the boilers, the force trap blower. So it was lack of oxygen, and then just, it was actually, it's neat.
Was it
scary, but.
Scary the first time, huh?
Oh, very scary.
Did you have any fear that because you work with old equipment, World War II equipment, the thing would break down and blow up under pressure, break down repeatedly? Was that any concern or fears?
Actually, no, not on board this ship. I don't think anybody was really afraid in our fire room or in engineering spaces. I mean, only because the simple fact that it was completely broken down, everything was re-cleaned, put back together. We did our own valve maintenance on our space, so we knew how everything was. It was really, I guess you had a sense of pride and security knowing that, hey, we fixed this, it's up, it's running, it's good to go.
When the World War II people came aboard, did they come aboard and help you show how to operate the system, or did you just read manuals? Relearn the system, which is a World War II system in 1980?
Actually, a lot of stuff came from some of the World War II veterans that came on board for boiler techs that came down to main space and showed us how to do it. A lot did come from the tech manuals going through that. A lot of stuff, you know, it was like because we modified it, stuff was rewritten because of the changes that we put in down there. But it was, for everything, I guess it was a shared effort between experience from the older vets and then the tech manuals and everything that they had piled up that we could use.
Have you seen the boiler room where you served in today or not yet?
Oh, yeah, yes, I did. In fact, the first man he introduced, Chuck, he took me down on board about a month ago. I came on board, and we went to my old space and toured that place around, and it was really just the memories just come flooding back of what we did down there.
What are some of the memories that come back?
Oh, well, stuff you can't, like I said, put on tape, but because we used to play a lot of jokes. The only one that really comes back that I would say that was a scary thought was that 1983, we left in June to go for a shakedown cruise for 3 months. We were supposed to come back in September. But the Beirut incident broke out in Lebanon, so we were deployed over there. So on our way over, after we went, actually when we got the call to go over there, I believe we were in Singapore. So we did 27 knots. We got the call from Singapore to Hawaii. We took on fuel, supplies. Did another 27 knots. We went to Panama. We sat out there. We had to take off fuel so we could go through the Panama Canal because the draft was too deep. Went through the canal, took fuel and supplies back on. We cruised across the Atlantic, went in through the Gibraltar, and sat off Beirut. But going through the Atlantic, since we were doing 27 knots for like 7 days, it was quiet, steady steaming. The boilers were all manual. It's not automatic, so everybody, all your watchstanders has to be awake to pay attention to what they're doing.
How many men would serve in your boiler room on a watch?
On one watch, well, you had a fire room messenger, you had a fire room pumpman, you had a machinist mate pumpman, you had the 2 burnermen, a saturated burnerman and a superheat burnerman.
What is saturated? What's superheated?
Saturated burnerman is working the steam drum side of the fire, and a superheater burning is working superheated side, which will take the saturated steam, raise to a higher temperature and dry it out. And so you had 2 burnermen, and then you had a boilerman and then a checkman. So you had, what, 8 people on watch at a given time.
And your duty would be what? During that time period, what was your job?
I qualified as boiler tech of the watch. I was a BGOW.
BGOW means that you're in charge of that watch.
In charge of that whole watch section,
yeah.
all 8 of us.
officially, am I correct that the New Jersey could cruise at 33 knots, but some people said it would go up to 35 unofficially?
Unofficially, yeah, you could take what they call liberty turns or try to bring it up and crank it up. Yeah, it could go that high, but textbook and what they have in all the books is 32.
32. And you normally, but you cruise over to Beirut at 27. Why 27? Was that more economical speed? Didn't challenge machinery?
Well, that plus the time frame they get over there, considering that so we were in Singapore and had to get all the way over there because they were going in to support the Marines landing. I guess it was just time to get over there. Another thing they were saying, at least on board the ship, was that, you know, they know the big J's coming over there, so they don't want the big guns there. So if we head from Singapore, head back to the West Coast, and then come in from the east, they'd be more terrified knowing that we had that much time to get that way, vice if we went from Singapore through the Suez and up there.
I was going to ask you that question. Why go the long way versus the short? It was, in effect, a psychological tactic used against the forces in Lebanon.
Well, that's what we were told. I mean, you know, being a low engineer down below, you have to just go by what everybody says topside.
What's the normal cruising speed for the ship when it's just operating on a regular tour?
Oh, it varied. 18 to 21 we would sit in. But that's pretty much when we left Long Beach and we went out. We were doing sea trials. We were doing full power runs, which bring out, you know, full power run. We had both boilers in the plant up, and we go like having like 30 people in a watch, and you got 16 to 20 people on watch. In fact, you had more than that because you had a lot of people training, getting qualified. Not everybody was qualified. You had a whole fire and pretty much down it with 2 boiler operations for a couple hours on end. So during that time frame, for about maybe 4 days, we were going like maybe 4 or 5 hours sleep between watches and going back down there and testing the equipment. But anywhere from 18 to 21 knots, we pretty much, that I remember going through.
Was there any fears when you raised the speed up to around 30 knots or so that anything could go wrong, or was everything considered in top-notch condition in 1980s?
Again, when we came up to high speeds like that, off a full power run, everything ran smooth. I mean, fear, I guess you always got fear with 600-pound steam running around. Anything could go at any given time, even small gauge line, but, you know, again, just having a confidence of bringing it through the yard period, knowing and seeing what we've seen, felt confident that it would hold.
How about the engine room that you see down there today? Does it look like it's in good shape? Could it run? Could it operate again?
I'm sure with a little work, it would definitely operate. It's a sad thing to see they put this thing back into mothballs, and I'm glad they did bring it back out to be a museum. But in time, I'm sure, I would love to see this place steam and just sit pierside and have its own power plant, you know, as a living museum. And then they could show tours and how the BTs and machinist mates really operate this place and take salt water, make it fresh water, and turn fresh water and using it to feed water and distill it for the boilers. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we do when you take a ship like this out, or any ship for that matter, out to sea.
Talk a little bit about your experiences. You're off of Beirut now. What happens when you're at Beirut, or off the coast of Beirut?
When we first got to Beirut, we sat out there about maybe 6 to 8 miles off, maybe even closer. So I know when you get topside, you could definitely see land. At one time, we made a pass in, and you really got to see buildings that were shot up, missing walls, you know. One day that really stands out is when we were sitting out there. We were there for a while, and morale started to go down, thinking, okay, we're here. We thought we were going to shoot, you know, let's do something. But we sat there steaming 8 knots, doing circles and figure eights. It was the day, and it's sad I can't remember the date now, but the day they blew up the Marine barracks. I had the 48 watch in the morning. I just got off watch. We were heading out to sea to deeper waters to do, dump trash and pump out villages. And sure enough, I was topside and looking out. We didn't even get the chance to do that. It went to general quarters, and everybody had to go to battle stations. So I was back on the flight deck or running back down below, and we get down below, and after GQ was set,
GQ is
general quarters. Everything was set, ready to go. Everybody was on station. They came out and told us the unfortunate situation that happened, and we sat there just waiting. It was days later before we really got to shoot, but we finally started to shoot strategic points.
What was the men's reaction to the long enough of the hotel where the Marines were stationed at the airport?
Oh, it was very somber, very quiet. New Jersey had a couple shipmates ashore at the time, and we did lose one of them. ETC Goncharowski, I believe his name was. Like I said, it was sad at the time, and very quiet.
Now you said several days later you got involved in firing your 16-inch guns. Tell me about that.
Well, actually, that brought morale up, got to do something about. I guess we felt we needed a little retaliation for what they did to the Marines and for bringing us all the way over there. Plus the fact that at that time our cruise was extended, because that wasn't until December, I think, we started shooting. So we already missed our home point of September. But the guns, when you start to shoot, is an awesome feeling. It felt a sense that we're here to do a job now. Doing our original job as being a deterrent didn't work. So they tried to intimidate us, so now it's to intimidate back and show them what we can do. I'd say morale went up when we got to shoot. And we had the Marines periodically fly on for hot meals. And it was awesome because the Marine sat at the table next to me describing he was on the line in a box, he said. And it's funny because his story talked about one of the guys from the yard period earlier, a vet that I was talking with, plus another guy from Vietnam that, in fact, I met when we pulled in Hawaii, and Ian, who worked the gunboats off Nam. They all had the same story, and it gives you goose pimples, The ship, you see the ship on the water, they see a flash on the sea, they hear a muffled boom, and then they hear whoosh, and then they said they feel the biggest earthquake you could possibly feel, the shell just hitting. It was just, that gives you a sense of, like I say, goose pimples when you hear that story. And then 3 generations of people telling you how the Big J supported, the Marines and the land forces is just awesome, because the ship has a lot of mystique and a lot of history behind it.
Did that affect the crew, the history of the ship, the importance of the ship to American history?
For a lot of people, I think it did, going to a ship that had a lot of history. And when you talk Navy, and you look back to the old John Wayne movies, cruisers, battleships, it's just the place I thought where to be back then. Not to say nothing bad about tin cans, but when you talk about a ship with firepower and a ship that can intimidate you and scare you down, this is a ship that could do it.
Roughly how many separate fire missions did you have off of Beirut? Do you recall?
Say again?
How many separate fire missions did you have off of Beirut?
Actually, I can't remember. I don't remember. Actually, I got my cruise book outside. It probably has that number out there.
Was it fairly common to fire day and night, or was it?
No. After the Marines, it took us a couple days. They had to do strategic points because it was pinpoint shooting, just for specific targets. I do know for a fact that on February 8th of 1984 that they laid 286 or 88 rounds, just massive shooting for
16-inch guns?
16-inch guns, 5-inch guns, just blasting. I mean, just letting loose.
What's it like to be aboard the ship when the ship is firing that rapidly?
It's like I said, it's an awesome feeling. I mean, the adrenaline gets pumping up. I mean, you're watching your boilers. Actually, people are running around with wrenches because you're waiting for leaks to take place because everything's panting and shaking inside. But it's a momentum. It's a morale builder,
Anything else about the Beirut operation that you think is important to tell me or tell us?
Well, just knowing that the ship left, I believe, June 5th of 1983 to go on a 3-month cruise and ended up staying off Beirut and finally coming home May of 84. I think it was like 5 days short of a year of being gone. That I can honestly say that time on board this ship, out of my 23 years in the service, was the best time. A lot of pride.
Were you at sea the entire time, or did you go land?
Oh, actually, until we came back, there was some Liberty ports. And on our way over, when we left Singapore, I mean, there was no Liberty ports. We got off Hawaii. They let us off to make phone calls. Panama, they let us off to make calls. When we went to right straight to Beirut, we stayed there for a while. We did try to go to Egypt, to Cairo. They had a Liberty launch go off, but I think we were there like for 4 hours. They had a recall because the Israelis did an airstrike, so they were worried about the Marines, so they recalled everybody and we went back to Beirut. August 12th was when we were in Panama. I called my wife there, and the next time I talked to her was New Year's Eve. So
you're really incommunicado for almost a good part of half a year or more.
pretty much.
Yeah. Did you receive mail on a regular?
Oh, mail, yeah. Mail was, oncoming. It was pretty good,
Did they ever have anything like Mars that we had in Vietnam, where ground troops could talk through radio back?
They had the stations, but they'd select that was for like emergency use only. It's not like the technology they got today to where they got internet on board the ship now and you could talk to your wife on a computer like that. I mean,
Sure.
but no, it was tough back then. You counted on that mill call. That mill PO was the best buddy you ever had. So.
How did the families react to the men being away for such a long period of time?
Well, unexpected cruise. I know a lot of people over the course of time end up getting divorced from it. A lot of people stay together and it made them stronger. When it was all over, the reaction was, hey, we're home, thank God. People, I mean, what can one expect? When you go away for such a long period like that, it changes, some for the good, some for the worse.
How has your service aboard the New Jersey affected you, after? That's why I always ask people, what impact did it have on your life years later?
Actually, because of New Jersey, it affected me from the beginning because I re-upped for it. My experience on board has made me actually stay in because of the true camaraderie that was shared here, the bonds, the friendships. That kept me in.
Yeah, you talk about the camaraderie? How did the camaraderie aboard a ship like the New Jersey compare to other ships you're on? Say it's a resupply ship, or when you're ashore.
Well, the circumstances were all different. I mean, when you're on board this and you were over in Beirut and gone for, like I said, a better part of a year, everybody became your brother. You knew everybody's problems.
How about the issue, too, in the 70s and 80s in the military, race issues of drugs and things like that? Did that impact the ship very much when you were aboard it, or no?
Actually, on board here, no. Like I said, circumstances at the time, everybody was your brother. You just pulled together. Just good time.
Do you still stay in any contact with any of the people aboard?
Quite a few people that, talk with, monthly, and some people, you get your annual Christmas card and the big email now. Since email came up, instead of just the annual Christmas card, it's like you get email all the time. So.
At this point, do you have anything I should have asked, any comments you want to make that you think are important to state for the record?
No, it's a sad thing to put this ship out. I mean, she has a lot of history, a lot of good experience on board her personally. She's something that hopefully will live on forever, for 200 years.
Gary, thank you very much. We've been talking today with Mr. Gary Pepek, who retired as a Master Chief, rank E9 from the Navy. Upcoming June 30, 2001, he served aboard the USS New Jersey from November 1981 through February 1984. Gary, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Stay right there, Gary.
Oh, here it is.
That's all right.
Here it is. Caught it.